Numerous problems exist in our schools today. From poor funding to state standards, teachers struggle to educate students in the way that they learn best. But one surprising problem that is often overlooked is parent involvement. Statistics show that parent involvement becomes a problem, particularly when children enter middle school. Yet this is often the time when students most need their parents. In the book Family Literacy: Connections in Schools and Communities, the author correctly states, "Common sense tells us, and the experts agree, the home is the child's first school and the parent is the child's most important teacher." Despite this, many parents do not see the need, particularly once their child enters middle school. Do teachers also believe this is a problem with today's educational system? 6th grade language arts teacher Sarah Lewis is an expert on this topic.
A lot of parents try to give their students more responsibility when they make it to middle school. Now that you're in middle school, you know, you need to check your grades, you need to stay on top of things. So they try that at the beginning, and then when they see that it's not helping their students, then they get a little more involved, or they at least keep up on their grades, still make it the student's responsibility. But yeah, there's less involvement with the parents at the middle school level.
Likewise, 7th grade English teacher Karen Rose also believes this is an issue.
I think parents see middle school as a time for students to start growing into their independence. So I see a lot of parents taking a little bit of a step back and trying to challenge their student to take responsibility for their own work and to really have some ownership over what they need to do to be successful at school. I think also just the maturity of students. Some parents are able to take that step back and their students start to become successful. We also see parents that take a step back and their students really struggle with having accountability and ending up getting a lot of zeros or failing classes for a period of time until they get some systems in place.
The evidence is stacking up. Next, former high school teacher and current professor of English at the University of Colorado, Dellen Martineau, shares her expertise.
I think parents are, I think it depends on the maturity level of the kid. Most parents who are fairly involved with their children's lives in elementary school will stay as closely involved clear through 7th or 8th grade depending upon their kid. Sometimes kids need their parents' involvement or ask for their parents' involvement, and so they'll continue to stay involved all the way through middle school and sometimes into high school. Other times kids just say, okay, I'm in middle school now, hands off, I don't want anything to do with you anymore. And they ask their parents to not be involved. But one of the things that I used to teach in high school, late middle school, high school, 8th grade, 9th grade, was self-advocacy. And so I would actually train the kids to tell their parents that they wanted to handle their problems themselves. So thinking back on parent-teacher conferences, I think I probably had twice as many parent conferences with middle school kids and met with almost every parent, whereas in high school I met with maybe half or a third. And really in high school, when I met with the parents in high school, it was usually because their kids had a problem, usually not any that really needed a lot of praise. So.
Parent involvement is indeed a problem our schools face today. One more expert, student teacher Brittany Baker, confirms this.
I'm student teaching right now in a 6th grade classroom, and the parents are still very involved. I don't have a lot of experience in the elementary schools, but I know that a lot of 6th grade parents are really worried about their kids because they have some newfound independence. So there's constantly emails being sent back and forth between the teacher and the parents. I was also student teaching in a 12th grade classroom, and in the 12th grade classroom there's very minimal parent involvement. So it seems to me like as they get higher up in grades, in grade levels, their parents are less and less involved because hopefully students are becoming more independent and taking more ownership of their own education, which is hopefully what's happening anyway. So yes, I would say that at the beginning of middle school, parents are really involved because they want to make sure that their kids are doing okay and they're succeeding and they're doing what they need to do. But as they become more independent, parents really don't need to be quite as involved.
These middle school teachers are not alone. Experts Jung Suk Lee and Natasha K. Bowen explain, unfortunately, the effectiveness of efforts designed to eliminate the achievement gap through increasing parent involvement may be attenuated by two factors. First, some parents of children with low achievement may encounter barriers to their involvement. And second, the positive influence of parent involvement on children's educational performance may be weaker in some families. While parent involvement is a problem, does it matter for children's academic success, particularly in English language arts? The answer is an astounding yes. While it is true that some students can thrive without parental assistance, others struggle to succeed. In a 2016 study, researchers observed significant links between parental school-based educational involvement and academic socialization and adolescents' grades. The link between parental education involvement and academic outcomes in secondary school observed here are consistent with a host of studies that have examined the influences of both global and type-specific influences of parental educational involvement on academic performances. Does this prove a correlation exists? We turn back to Sarah Lewis, 6th grade teacher, for her opinion on the matter.
I do think that parent involvement does affect the success of students. If parents are involved, if parents show their kids that school is important to them, to the parents, then school becomes important to the students. With English language arts, you know, if parents read, if parents communicate through writing with emails and things like that, you see a little more of that in their students as well, the desire to read or write more effectively.
Does parent involvement truly affect academic success? While it is true that students do need some autonomy, ultimately parent involvement does help students succeed. Karen Rose, 7th grade teacher, agrees.
I think parent involvement makes a huge difference in students' success at school. Specifically in language arts, I know I ask a lot of students to do some of their more extended reading and extended writing assignments as homework, just because I think it's an easier time span to do it on their own time. And parents who really encourage their students to keep up with their reading, if we're reading a chapter book or an extended piece of writing, it makes a difference. Kids come to class, they're prepared, they can participate in discussion, they have knowledgeable information from the text, to work with. And, students who don't do that work at home and maybe aren't held accountable to do that work really struggle in class to be successful. I think parents who check up on their students' grades and ask their students questions, it makes a difference. Students who know that they really need to do that work. And the same goes for, we have a lot of students who have coaches and are in certain clubs and teams that require certain academic levels of success. And that makes a difference. We see students who, maintain GPA because they know they have to, and that makes a difference.
The evidence is overwhelming. Even though she worked in a high school setting, Dylan Martineau had similar experiences.
I think parent involvement does affect kids' success, especially in English and language arts, because a lot of times, especially in high school, there's a lot more homework that involves pretty serious writing skills and reading skills. So parents are really good at helping enforce the homework quota. So if I would send home, read chapter 1 and 2, then the parents could make sure that they did that. One thing that really helped me was being able to email parents and let them know what the homework was so that the parents could follow through with me at home. There's not a lot of parent involvement in the classroom at the high school level because there's issues of security and who we let in the building and don't let in the building during the day. But as far as being able to go to the parent if I had an issue with a student, that was really helpful. And especially, like I said, with homework enforcement.
All of these experts agree. According to Business Wire, this is true no matter what personal factors are at work. The number of parents raising a child, the family's economic situation, the parent's familiarity with English, the size of the family, the parent's education, or a child's own interests, talents, and abilities. Research about the family's role, a parent's influence, and the relationship between school and home has produced clear as a bell results. Nothing affects the academic outcome for a child as much as the involvement of a parent or other adult caregiver in that child's education. But what do parents have to say about this problem? Parents of two middle school boys, Kendra and Steve Kamer, have dealt with this problem firsthand.
I think I would say that what I have seen in the schools where we have our kids, which are just the local public schools, it seems like every class has several parents that go in at least on a weekly basis and volunteer or help out with field trips and that kind of thing. So it seems like there's lots of kids who have parents involved in the schools, but I know for sure that there's lots of kids who have parents who aren't able to be involved in the schools, often because they work, and then I'm sure sometimes because they're just not really around very much, maybe for other reasons. So I maybe that's not enough of an answer, but I think I've seen more parental involvement in the schools than I expected.
I mean, I think a lot of people plan to, I mean, they might do this on purpose or not, but they plan to have the schools basically raise their kids. And I think that's just a really bad idea. They're not there to raise your children. They're there to teach them basically reading, writing, and arithmetic. And I mean, you have social studies and all the other pieces that go into what you're taught, but they're not raising your kids. And a lot of parents, I think, sort of drop them off hoping the school raises their kids and they turn out as good people. But what's more important behind the scenes in raising the kids is what happens in the home with the parents. School's not meant to raise your kids.
Parents of middle schoolers are incredibly busy. Is it worth it for them to really try and be involved in their child's education? After acknowledging the problem, Kendra and Steve further emphasized the importance of parent involvement.
I mean, I think engaging with the kids, with their homework and with the things they're learning and teaching them how to apply it to everyday life is important. So, I mean, even with our 6-year-old, he talks about apple and we know he's learning to spell apple. So we talk to him about, yeah, remember you learned this. How do you spell apple? We do that kind of stuff all the time. And it makes it that learning isn't just from 8:45 to 3:15, that it happens all the time, and it helps reinforce what's done at school.
I think that obviously there's an element of your like genetics and what kinds of grades you're going to naturally get. But what we have found with our kids is sometimes they're not wanting to put in the effort. My middle school age son came home one day saying, you know, the other kids in school are getting C's. C's passing. He kept saying that. He kept even saying D is passing.
D is passing.
And we thought, but you don't need to get C's and D's. You just need to get your homework done, you know. And so I remember we had to kind of sit down and think about what might help him, and kind of go through the process of how we could get involved in his education, in making sure he's getting his homework done and that kind of thing. Because even though he was willing to settle for certain grades, we knew that if we got involved, we could help him get better grades. And so that's what we did. We do spend also a lot of time helping with homework. You know, when either of the kids in middle school have vocabulary homework, it can really be helpful if we kind of quiz them on it and walk through the vocabulary with them. I think they could still learn it without us, but I think we're able to kind of get involved in that and help them out. I think that's been good for their academic success, I'd say.
Sure.
Is there a solution to this growing problem? What does parent involvement look like? 2 recent studies offer some practical tips for how to encourage parent involvement. These include asking parents if the instructions for homework are clear, offering parent workshops on writing and literature, hiring parents as part-time teachers, promoting homeschool communication, having parents read to their kids at home, and establishing policies that respect parent involvement. While these solutions do not encompass everything, they are a start. Do the teaching experts agree with research? Ms. Lewis certainly does.
We encourage our parents to get involved with the education, getting the parent username for Parent Connect so that they can be checking their grades. Coming to parent-teacher conferences when we have them, getting involved with different activities. If we have, chaperones for field trips or activities, then parents are involved. So those are some of the ways that we've encouraged in recent times to get the parents involved.
Along with encouraging parental involvement, Ms. Rose offers some other solutions teachers can use.
Parent involvement is tough. I know families have a lot of things going on. If it's, working parents, multiple siblings, just being busy with all the different things. And especially in middle school, the transition from having 1 or 2 teachers to having 6 or 7 that parents need to communicate with, and teachers who run things differently in different classes, it's difficult for parents to keep track of that. And we know that. I think a lot of schools have things in place in order to communicate well with parents. If it's a communication app, if it's email, if it's mass emails or mass phone calls that teachers can use, and hopefully parents really take that information and use it, and knowing that teachers, we're not just going to send it just to send information for no reason. I think another thing I really encourage parents to do is communicate with their child and check the portal where they can check grades and assignments. That's a huge way for students to have really immediate feedback, and for parents to do that as well. They know what assignments have been turned in, they know their grades, they know if teachers put things in ahead of time, what's coming up and what might be due soon. So those are some sort of exterior ways for parents to communicate. I think anytime parents have really specific concerns about either struggles with academics, if it's a specific issue in a certain class or a content area kids are struggling with, contacting teachers. I know our team has meetings as a team with parents when we have either a parent bringing a concern to us, or if we want to call parents and say, hey, we're really concerned about this child, they're maybe struggling in multiple classes, and trying to brainstorm some ways that parents and teachers can team together. We know, especially by middle school, a lot of students have a lot of things going on, and it's important for teachers to have the whole picture to really know how we can best meet students in our classroom, along with what other things they have going on.
Communication is a central theme in discovering a solution. Student teacher Brittany Baker also supports this idea.
So I've seen parent and teacher communication done in a lot of different ways. I know some teachers have told me, and these are few and far between, that in the first couple weeks of school they try to call every single parent, which is a little intense because usually teachers have upwards of 120, 130 students. So that's a lot of phone calls to make. But I've heard that it really strengthens the relationship from the beginning, and it gives them a positive foot to start out on. So even if the parents don't answer, they just call and introduce themselves and talk about who they are and how excited they are for the school year and that sort of thing. And even if they're not making phone calls, just like a constant email communication with the parents, whether that be individual talking about specific students, or I've also seen schools do like newsletters for their department. So sending out like a generic, the 6th grade newsletter, this is what's going on, this is the assignments we're doing, that sort of thing, just so parents are kept in contact and they know what's going on. The other thing I think that is a problem, that can be a problem, is that the teachers only contact parents when there's bad things happening, when their kids are in trouble. So a lot of teachers that I've known have said, like, for every bad email that you send, make sure you also send a good email, or make a good phone call for every bad phone call you have to make. So you balance out the positivity with the negativity, just so parents know that they're not always just going to be contacted when something is wrong, if a student shows improvement or if a student is succeeding. Also just making it a point to let the parents know in those situations also. And I think that's also for the teacher's sanity, to keep in mind that there are still really good things that are happening in their classroom, and that we shouldn't just let parents know when bad things are happening. So just like a constant stream of email communication, phone call communication, that sort of thing, I think is really useful for that parent-teacher communication. And I think that relationship also strengthens the student's growth in the long run, because if they know that my teacher's going to email my parent if I'm not behaving or if I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, then they'll know that they're kind of a united front with it, like not against the student, but for the student's education. And so hopefully they'll be more encouraged to learn in the long run. So, yeah.
Communication isn't the only avenue for parental involvement. While Professor Martineau agrees with the importance of communication, she likewise emphasizes the need for parental involvement in extracurricular activities.
The thing is with kids, as they get older, they want more self-advocacy. I've found through lots of years of teaching that kids really appreciate rules. They like to have structure. But they also want to be left alone to find those boundaries themselves in a lot of ways, and they don't want their parents involved as much. Most of the parent involvement that I saw that was the most constructive was parent involvement in things like sports events and community events, plays and drama activity, sponsorship of different clubs and other parent associations and things like that, board meetings, things like that. That way they could sort of support their kids on the side or behind the scenes using talents that they already had. So if there's a question of how teachers can get parents more involved, it's, if you notice that in a parent conference that a parent has a certain talent or resource that you can use, ask them to bring it into your classroom, or ask them to showcase it so that other people can benefit from their knowledge and experience.
All of these solutions and more can be used in the classroom to solve this issue. However, as always, the parents are the number one experts with what their children need. Steve and Kendra offer some creative solutions.
Yeah. One thing I appreciate that our school does is we get emails from one of the science teachers. We get a weekly email, and he explains what they're learning. More importantly, at least more interesting to me, he explains how they're learning it. So if he's teaching velocity in science, he'll say, we're going out to the track and we're going to drive remote control cars. And so I hear about this and I think that sounds cool. So I'll ask my kids, did you do the cars? What did you learn? And so him keeping me informed, but maybe even more importantly, keeping it interesting is what helps me remember to ask my kids about what they're learning. And also had a really good project at school where they were studying polymers. I don't know this stuff, but they were supposed to figure out how to drop an egg from the roof of the school and have it wrapped up in some way in polymers that'll help it not break. And so Owen came home talking about this project, and I had a good time engaging with him in that too. And it was all because the teacher had kept us informed on what they were doing and made it interesting. I think that helped a lot.
Yeah. I think it's got to be really hard. I think it's probably the hardest thing. One of the hardest things teachers struggle with is how do you get parents to care for the parents who don't. It's probably easier for us because we care. And we read the emails, but what do you do for the kids who don't? Different schools have different things. Charter schools, all the ones around here, I think, have requirements for teachers they have requirements for parents that they actually have to put in a number of volunteer hours. Every teacher does that. But that's volunteering at the school. That might not, that gets them in the school, seeing what's going on. That maybe helps involvement. But I think leveraging social media, putting up pictures. Like we look at Facebook for our kids' school because they're leveraging social media and putting up pictures, and we're looking to see if our kid's there, so we know what's going on. Figuring out all the ways that they can keep the parents in the know, emails, social media, anything. I mean, I think it's probably always changing too with technology and stuff like that. But I mean, we can look and see our kids' grades instantly. We know from day to day what assignments they've turned in. And, you know, when we were in school, that wasn't like our parents had no access to that except once a quarter when the grade card came home. So trying to keep us informed and interested and doing it creatively with the means that we have out there is probably a good idea. It's hard though. I think that'd be a hard part of being a teacher.
All of these sources reveal three key things about the issue. One, while some parents are not involved in their child's education because they want them to learn responsibility, many children are not ready to be on their own at the middle school level. Two, parent involvement is a huge factor in a child's academic success. And three, there are several ways parents get involved in their child's education, from at-home involvement to actually volunteering in the classroom. It is time for both educators and parents to take a stand.